Mr. Gordon Campbell, President and CEO, and the Victoria Mutual Group, Devon Barrett, Chief Investment Officer, Victoria Mutual Group, and my fellow VM manager, Mrs. Dahlia, Mrs. Paula Kerr-Jarrett, Mr. Chung, clients and specially invited guests, members of the media, good evening. I would like to start by just inviting us to have a brief moment of prayer. If you're not so inclined, then please observe a moment of silence. Omnipotent God, we pause to acknowledge the fact that you are the ruler of the universe and the ultimate director of all things in it. Forgive us, Lord, when we trespass in thought, word, and deed. Thank you for your especially in bringing us together to discuss this very important topic. So we consecrate this hall to you, Lord, and ask for your guidance over the proceedings here this afternoon. I ask all of these in your name. Amen. So, last week, Friday, there was a major event in the world. We got, and I say we, because the USA is such an important part of everything. They, according to Forbes 2017 publication, they account for 22% of the world's output. And consequently, anything that happens there is of importance to us. This is even more so given the importance of the United States economy to us. Those of us, so your presence here this afternoon is an endorsement of that fact. And we thank you so much for being here, because this is forum number 1. There will be many others, because consistent with our mandate to provide credible information to the public, consistent with our mandate of providing information at all levels, we seek to use events and activities, global and local, which may have an impact on this economy. And so we're truly delighted that you can be here this afternoon. The fact of the matter is, though, that I am not your host, neither am I your moderator. Our role here this evening, other than praying, is simple: to introduce Ralston Hyman, who will be your moderator this afternoon. I know he doesn't need a lot of introduction, but permit me to remind you that Ralston Hyman OD is one of Jamaica's leading business and economic financial analysts as well as editor. He has over 30 years local and international experience in micro and macroeconomics. He's particularly versed in the workings of multilateral systems, in, for example, the IMF, the IDB, and WTO. He's also a founding member of the EPOC, the recently established Economic Program Oversight Committee, and is the recipient of several awards. So you would agree with me that when we wanted to do this event, then he's the perfect person to guide us through these proceedings. So please welcome him, because he will be in charge of the proceedings from here.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Members of the head table, distinguished members of the audience, it is indeed a pleasure to be here today, because as we know, the orderly dissemination of accurate information is of paramount importance in the functioning of markets. Last week, just before the inauguration, we saw the Global Economic Forum in Davos. That's the August Economic Forum, where all the world's decision makers, corporate leads, academic leads, they were there discussing the same subject, the policies to be pursued by the US administration and the potential impact on the global economy, of which the Jamaican economy is a part. So we could say that this is our Davos, and in that regard, we'd like to commend the Victoria Mutual Group for sponsoring this initiative, because Jamaica is a small economy. Operating within the context of a larger international economy in which the USA is our major trading partner. US is 20 to 22% of the world's economy. The European Union is the largest collective economic space, 25% of the world's output. It is also Jamaica's major source of grant funding. Over the last 40 years, the European Union has provided some 20 billion in grant funding to Jamaica, which is used for all kinds of things: security and justice, infrastructure development, fiscal support, all of that. Then there's the Chinese economy, and incidentally, the Chinese president Xi Jinping, he was the star at Davos. This is the first time a Chinese leader has ever gone to Davos. And he's dubbed himself the General Secretary of Globalization. But without further ado, I'd like the CEO of the Victoria Mutual Group, Mr. Courtney Campbell, to come and give us some opening remarks. Thank you very much, Courtney.
Thank you very much, Ralston. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I want to say a very special welcome to all of us here. We have our moderator. We'll soon meet a very powerful panel. Victoria Mutual Group is a strong integrated financial group, so we had to have a strong panel. Right? Now, members of the audience, you fall into two categories. You're either already a customer and a member of Victoria Mutual, or you're about to become one. So in that spirit, we welcome you. Want to welcome, and in particular, Director of Victoria Mutual Wealth Management, Mr. Milton Sambuda. Acknowledge Milton, the President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, Larry Watson. But to introduce you to the panel, I think Ralston will probably do that, but I wanted to thank myself, all the panelists for being here. Paula, Kerr-Jarrett, Dahlia, Walker-Huntington, Dennis, Chung. Dennis, many of you would know, is a cyclist, right? And he takes these rides from Kingston to Nickrill and so on. So I asked, what does he eat after a ride like that? He'll tell you when he presents. And of course, Devon, Barrett, who is our Chief Investment Officer. So we really want to thank all of them for agreeing to do this. This is a period of glorious uncertainties. Who would have thought on January 23rd, 2016, who would have thought that we would have had Brexit, the Brexit vote going the way it did, as well as Mr. Trump being, because remember, January would have been before Super Tuesday, right? And who would have thought that he would have been elected as president? Well, you know what, we don't know the impact, but there are a couple of things we do know. First of all, we know that the Caribbean has a trade deficit of over $4 billion with the United States. We also do know that with respect to his policies, we have some indication because we have heard about immigration, we have heard about the wall, we have heard about protectionism, we have heard about the tax cuts, we have heard about deregulation of the financial sector. All of those we have heard about, we need to know, understand what the implications are. But there are some other things we haven't heard about. For those, I would say to us, probably we need to do what the South Koreans have done. I've read that in the Foreign Affairs Ministry, they have actually set up a Twitter desk. Very well get some tweets indicating statements, right? So though we heard last year that it's it's only America first. America first. So the question is, what else do we know? We all know, though, that on a serious note, Jamaica is so much more resilient than we were 5 years ago. And things not out of woods and things are imperfect, but our fiscal accounts are looking better. Our inflation rate lowest in several decades, or interest rates lowest in several decades, or NIR high. So in many respects, we are more resilient, we are more able to withstand the shocks than we were. So that's a good. The other thing though, that's important, and that's business and consumer are at some all-time. And I would say to you, in that spirit of it is good for Victoria Mutual. The other thing you need to know that here for you, and is to try to live out our purpose. Our purpose is to empower our members globally. to acquire their own homes and achieve their financial independence. And that's the reason we put on, forums such as this, because knowledge is power. If we're going to empower, we have to share information with you. In the last year, we have done a few other things. We have launched an online mortgage portal. That's the only one in the industry. But in VM Wealth, the VM Wealth team has actually launched some really good trust products that are doing very well. Devon may not get a chance to do that because he's sharing with you about Trumponomics, but I will tell you that the unit trust products launched in September are exceeding our expectations in terms of take-up, and I would ask you to check one of the VM reps about them this evening before you leave. I should also point out that in terms of empowering, we have in VM Wealth over the last 60 years, many persons don't know, raised over $22 billion for funding private sector companies, either by way of bonds or IPOs. And that has been good for both the companies that have wanted to expand, but as well for investors who have surplus funds. So that is something I would ask you to check on. So I won't be longer in empowering you. I just challenge you to listen carefully, ask as many questions as you have, right? And I believe we have a really very competent panel will be able to answer you. And let's continue the dialogue even after this. But very importantly, remember that Victoria Mutual, we are here for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. I can see that you took Chief Executive Officer privilege. So. But I say to our panelists, we want to be efficient because as Xi Jinping says, it is efficiency and innovation that is going to help you to navigate globalization, not hiding behind tariff wars. So as we said before, America is Jamaica's major trading partner. Why is this so? Remittance flows account for almost $2.4 billion annually. That's 15% of GDP. It's our largest net source of foreign exchange. 55 cents out of each dollar of remittances come from the tourism is our large gross earner of foreign one of the tourists in the United States. 8% of our income from the United States. The percent of our exports go to the United States. The state is also the largest in the various multilateral organizations to which we have been for the last 40 years. International Monetary Fund, America is about 10% on the World Bank. So this is a very important discussion because while we are moving in the right direction, Jamaican economy is still extremely and vulnerable. Trade deficit in America the end of July was $7 million. So it's still important to the economy. So I believe that this forum is extremely important to the Jamaican economy. Additionally, the percent of Jamaica's over 2 trillion is denominated in United States dollars and tends to move as interest rates move. So as we saw the recent supplementary estimate, we allocate some 8.6 billion more for debt service charges because of the depreciation exchange rate and higher rates. We'll talk about Trumponomics. Trumponomics is fundamentally about fiscal stimulus, although they're fiscal stimulus. Also about trade protection. So going in a different direction from which you have become accustomed. So it is particularly important. That's why the Chinese president made it clear that nobody is going to win from a trade war. So the entire global economy is going to be impacted. So we have this August panel. We know Paula Kerr-Jarrett. She's a member of the Economic Growth Council, Dahlia Walker-Huntington. Immigration matters, so you know this is about immigration. Then Chung is the leading voice on the face of the private sector organization of Jamaica. Barrett is your chief investment officer. As we go along, we'll tell you a lot more about them. So, I mean, if we could just move to Dennis Chung. Dennis Chung is extremely capable of leading this discussion. Because when we were experiencing the Great Recession of 2008, he was the only man on the bridge with me telling the country that we are headed for a very steep recession and that we needed to go to the International Monetary Fund for assistance. Everybody else who you're talking now were afraid to say those things because we were following the data, they were following emotions. So Dennis Chung to me is particularly appropriate. He's a chartered accountant by profession, and he's also the CEO of a private sector organization at this particular point in time. He's an immediate past president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Jamaica, and I dare say one of the country's most important financial analysts. So it is therefore against his background that we call Dennis Chung to tell us that the private sector sees these to be Mr. Chung. Welcome, Dennis.
Ralston. Good evening, everyone. It's a special media side. Without anything out there that's not in favor. Yeah, you always have to do that. I think yesterday we were cycling out to St. Thomas. Right. You know. And someone happening with the world, you know, we see, you know, we have Trump. I said to him, listen, in the Bible, Revelation, right? The end is near. Until then, the worst that can happen for you is that the world ends a little earlier than projected. Right? No. But until then, let's look at the impact it's going to be, because then you can have a little money to put in PM, right? So I've been asked to look at what I expect the impact is going to be from Trump ascending to the presidency of the United States. And it's curious that it has happened on the heel of Brexit, because I think that sort of pronounces even more what's going to happen from a global perspective. And we've seen a lot of changes happen. I mean, you know, throughout history, different countries have risen, different countries have fallen. And one of the things we need to examine is this an inflection point also? Trump has come to power with certain policies. Three of them really, I think, I want to focus on in terms of perspective, because it's really three of them I think that's really going to impact us. The first one, which I'm sure Dahlia will speak about very fluently, is one on immigration, right? I don't know if you know if your wall is going up or not, but you will be in that position to know. And his stance on immigration, I think, can be somewhat damaging to the American economy, because if you think about it, it's somewhat paradoxical, because the American economy was built based on immigrants. Right? Every country we know that's great has been built based on immigrants. So it's yet to see what's going to happen there. The other one, which is more interesting for us, is a matter of the trade agreements and what I consider to be anti-free trade policies. Because the truth is that the US, which is really the country that has been pushing globalization, is now going against the stance of globalization. And just today, he signed the executive order to come out of the TPP. He's going after NAFTA next. And his reason behind it is that he wants to create jobs for Americans, which is really a stupid reason, because he can't stop globalization, right? And if he takes back those jobs, what he's doing is impoverishing the country. And the reason why I say that is because as you develop as a country, the lower level jobs go out. And what you need to do is develop new industries with higher value jobs. He's doing it the other way. So he's bringing back the lower level jobs, which are less income for people, And at the same time, he's going to make things more expensive for people by putting on a border tax. There are some advantages there for us. The other thing is the whole matter of the geopolitics, which I think is very significant also. And I think if he approaches it in the way that he has been, particularly with Brexit, particularly what Ralston said about Chinese president seeing himself as the general secretary of globalization, and the fact that China is now everywhere. In order to have growth in their economy now, they have to go outside and build outside, because that's the only way they're going to have growth. The fact is that the policies that Trump is pursuing from a foreign policy point of view, I think is going to give more credence to China, more credence to Russia, and therefore, what's going to happen with this void that's going to be created is like pulling a certain strongman out of a certain area. And then what happens is a free-for-all emerge as a winner. Direction of the policies, we know that there's going to be change. The problem that we face now is uncertainty, because we don't know where the policies are going. And I don't expect any immediate impact, because things take a time to go to places. The Democrats, I think, will put up some amount of resistance, and they might delay the process by a few months. And it's going to take some hold up. But definitely, I think, based on where he's going, the American economy has been going already. I think it is the American economy has been weakening, and he's pushing further. It's losing its foothold as a global power, and he's accelerating. So it's going to have some global ramifications as well as local economic ramifications. So immigrants, for example, and this is Dahlia's area, right? But I think that if someone is taking that stance, they have more divisiveness in the United States. He's against immigrants. People might be looking more towards countries like Canada and Europe, as places to live, which is not good for the US, because as I say, immigrants build countries. And certainly the night Trump won, I think the Canadian immigration site crashed, right? If we look, for example, what's happening in the UK, companies, because of Brexit, are actually looking to relocate their head offices. So if he continues to pursue this line, we could actually see some of that just moving across the border north. So it could cause a capital market with uncertainty. I mean, especially with pulling out of the TPP, which is favorable to business. People might say, well, why not go to Canada? Why not move my capital elsewhere? So people might be looking at Europe and also Canada. So they can be beneficiaries, as well as ourselves, because we can position ourselves to take advantage of some of that capital movement if it happens. And then India, as I said, if they're smart to increase their global footprint, already China owns like 95% of Jamaica, right? And then the effects on global prices, of course, if the economy weakens and currency moves start happening. In terms of Jamaica, 60% of remittances from the US. Trade, 39% of merchandise trade is with US, with about 50% of the exports. Oil prices accounts for approximately 30 to 35% of imports, so it could be insignificant. And from a cooperation point of view, things like security and border control, we've had cooperation here, diplomatic relations, and cultural relationships. So you see, from all of this, there is a possible significant impact one way or the other based on the policies he pursues. As people say, when the US sneezes, we catch a cold. So what are we looking at in terms of possible impact? remittances. If immigration, if we have, and I don't know, Dahlia might mention this, but if we have a situation where we have a lot of illegal immigrants here sending back remittances, then we could have a problem, right? Because we already have a significant amount of money coming into remittances, and if we go down 20–30%, it's significant given the context of our balance of payments. So that data needs to be understood. In terms of trade, though, you know, I don't see that his policy towards NAFTA and TPP is going to affect us that much. As a matter of fact, I think it's an advantage, because if he raises border taxes from Mexico, for example, and China by 35%, it makes our products more competitive. We just have to position ourselves that way. So that could be a positive for us. I don't think that he's going to worry about it in Jamaica in terms of, you know, the products we're sending in. That could be a positive for us, but also we should be doing, I'm looking at strategies as well. We also look at markets like China, Africa, for example, as one. So we should be diverse ourselves more. Looking at countries, looking at Canada also have a large migrant population. The UK have their problems. They're going to have, but we can move more towards diversify ourselves out of the US. Oil prices, the energy diversion, yeah, will pay continue and lessen the impact. And cooperation, I think we should position ourselves from a diplomatic view how we can do that. That's going to be important. But the impact really is not immediate. It's going to be more medium term, and there are significant advantages that we from it, because as Annie said, in every crisis there's an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm glad you ended with that Chinese problem, because speaking in Davos, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, he contended that protectionism is like a man hiding in a dark room from the wind and the rain, but he's also hiding himself from the sunlight. He also contended that you cannot turn an ocean back into a lake, the banks reverse. So when we look at that, then he spoke about trade. President Trump has summoned the leader of Mexico, Enrique Pena Nieto, to the White House. He's also summoned Justin Trudeau to the White House in order to renegotiate NAFTA. America's trade deficit with Mexico is $58 billion last year. With Canada, it's $9 billion, and with the Chinese, it's $320 billion. With the Eurozone, it's $134 billion. The only significant economy with which they have a trade surplus is with the UK, which is $1.5 billion. So it's very important in terms of trade. Now, his assumption is that you can hide behind tariff wars. What Barack Obama was saying is that we need to spend more on innovation, science and technology, research and development, because everybody is out trading America because of the lack of investments in training, research and development, new capital, new industries. So you can't turn back that by using policies such as going behind tariff wars. So America will be isolated. Now, our next presenter is Dahlia Walker-Huntington. As we know, America is like Kingston 21, so any rash immigration policies will have a deleterious impact on the Jamaica economy. As we said before, remittance flows are our largest net source of foreign exchange, whether we want to believe it or not. So it's very. Speaker is Dahlia Walker-Huntington. She's an attorney and principal of the law offices Dahlia A. Walker, PA, Hollywood, Florida. She practices in areas of immigration, family, international and criminal law, a family law and county court mediator and arbitrator. Dahlia is a special magistrate for the city of Miramar and a former adjunct professor at Miami-Dade College School of Justice and Political Science Department. She's also a regular contributor on immigration policies and on Power 106 FM. It is therefore without further ado that we ask Dahlia Walker-Huntington to come and address us about the potential impact of the transformation.
evening, everyone. Thank you, Ralston. Well, for centuries, Caribbean people have gone to America in search of success and to share in the American dream. One of the most famous of the early Caribbean immigrants to America was Nevis-born Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton sailed to America only to be followed centuries later by the Jamaican families of Secretary Colin Powell, Alicia Keys, Kamala Harris, and by Jamaicans such as Commander Janice Smith, the first Black female commander of a U.S. naval destroyer, who started out as a cook on a ship. And at least another million first and second generation Jamaicans who currently call America their home. I've been asked to speak to Donald Trump's stated or implied direction on immigration and his policies' impact on Jamaica. That's a very difficult task because Trump has had several different stances on immigration for the last year and a half. His latest position on January 18th, he said in 2 to 3 months he will have a plan. So maybe I should come back in 2 to 3 months to tell you. But let's go back to the day when he made that infamous descent on the gold elevators in Trump Tower in Manhattan in 2015, announced his candidacy for the America, indeed the highest job in the free world. Unfortunately, he denounced immigrants' first speech. Americans rapists and the 11 million immigrants in America. He promised a deportation, of course, to build a wall, to pay for the wall. He then said in a 6-hour interview in mid-2016, he would remove only the immigrants with criminal records, which estimated to be 2 to 3 million. This would have to include green card holders with criminal records. Was and is the law of the land and is an ongoing process. Obama, as president, supported more immigrants than his other presidents. In his interview before being president, Trump said dreamers, these are came to America as children, that they're going to be, quote, very happy. Newsday has reported Congress and his administration to assist the dreamers because Trump plans on executive action that Obama signed into law, or he's going to revoke it. Trump has also said that he plans to emphasize deportation and plans that allow people to and stay in America. This would indicate to me that even stricter standards for issuance of visas. Trump also said he will issue directives to the Department of Labor to ensure that temporary workers are not cutting wages and that Americans are being displaced. Again, this was and is the policy of the United States. Trump himself has used undocumented workers in building his hotels. He has used H-1B temporary workers as staff. Trump has also criticized sanctuary cities and threatened to cut federal funding and has called for an increase in detainers. So come back to the question, does Trump have an immigration plan? What he does have and has had is a hook that has demonized immigrants and played on the fears of working class Americans who have always blamed immigrants for their economic woes. They're now blaming the current immigrants, but before it was the Irish, the Italians, the Polish, the Germans, and so now it's the brown immigrants who are being blamed. Now this blaming by Americans also applied to African Americans, working class, who blame especially Caribbean Americans for quote unquote taking their jobs over the years. While the economy under the Obama administration rebounded from the recession of 2008 to create hundreds of thousands of jobs and lowered the unemployment rate from double digits to 4.7%, some middle and working class Americans either did not see their jobs return or found jobs paying significantly less than before. And it goes to your point, Dennis, that in an evolving economy, certain jobs and industries are going to be eliminated. And despite the state of the current economy in America and the strength of its military At Trump's inauguration, he chose to paint a bleak picture of America and pitch what was to be a historical speech solely to his supporters, as if he were still in a school gymnasium on the campaign trail. The hypocrisy of Donald Trump about jobs is that he doesn't feel the need to even lead by example, by even pretending to stop manufacturing his and his family's goods all over the globe while purporting America first. He criticizes the crumbling infrastructure in America when he's admitted to having not paid taxes and refuses, even after the inauguration, to release his tax returns. The America First and nationalist cries feeds his base, and the promise to put America back to work is, in my opinion, setting up his pivot to, in short order, begin to take credit for the existing economy and the trajectory created by the Obama administration. Trump also promised to eradicate radical Islamic terrorists. This is the second tie to the anti-immigrant sentiment from Trump. The other is characterized not just as terrorists who harm everyone, who don't care where you're from, but indeed all immigrants become suspect under this plan. Elections has consequences, and a US president gets to select a cabinet, and those cabinet secretaries, along with the president, sets the tone for the various departments. And for purposes of my presentation, the Department of Homeland Security, whose designee is General John Kelly, and the Department of Justice, the Attorney General designee, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, the same senator who said that grabbing a woman's genitals was not sexual assault, will be the nation's chief law enforcement officer. So the impact of Trump's stated plans, policies, changing though they may be, the first is going to be on the young people who went to America as children and were granted deferred action by President Obama. And believe me when I tell you that there are many Jamaicans in this category whose parents took them to America on visas or gave them bogus identification to enter America. And they, after graduating from high school, realized that some of them that they were not even Americans. And so President Obama deferred any of their deportation. The second major impact is the undocumented, those amongst us who entered the US without inspection, meaning that they went in again on bogus documents. Some of them on what we call photo switch passports. They took picture out, imposed their picture, presented themselves as someone else. Or they came on a visa, they overstayed. And the third group are actual green card holders, people who are documented, but who have committed crimes in the past. Whether it's some of them very minor, for which they served no time in jail, slap on the wrist in the criminal system, but viewed by immigration as serious offenses. You can expect enforcement there to be stepped up. But be reminded that deportation is a process. It has a framework. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is a subset of the Department of Homeland Security, takes aliens into custody and issue charging documents. They then send these documents to the Office of the Chief Counsel, which is a subset of the Department of Justice. So you have on one hand General Kelly, on the other hand you have Attorney General Sessions. The Department of Justice under Sessions is where prosecutorial discretion can be exercised as to who is actually selected for deportation. Sessions has indicated in his confirmation hearings that he will enforce the law. That is, there will be no discretion under his administration, and he will be a strict immigration law enforcer. The Immigration Act of 1996 actually took away a lot of discretion from judges in deportation proceedings. And so the Department of Justice and the Attorney General really has the power to place someone in deportation. And in many cases, while circumstances would have led a judge to grant relief or dismiss a charge, the law gives little or no room to the judge. So while we are expecting deportation to increase, in the period from 2012 to 2016, 4,100 persons were deported from the US. Those deportees are made up of two groups. One, overstays, and the other, criminal immigrants. Again, some for relatively minor offenses, and others, of course, hardened criminals. And Jamaica needs to be prepared for an increase in the number of deportees. It is going to happen. While the Migration Policy Institute study shows a low number of criminal deportees actually committing new crimes, the country needs to be proactive in deportee resettlement and reintegration to help these people, many of whom don't know their way out of the Norman Manley Airport. Again, the remittances that Dennis spoke about. While we don't have any concrete data on the number of undocumented Jamaicans in America, based on MPI estimates of the number of Caribbean people present, the number of people who are undocumented, and I must tell you, math was never my forte. I calculate that there's about 67 to 70,000 Jamaicans who are undocumented. Now, again, to Dennis's point, those people are recent arrivals. So the ones with more connection to Jamaica and sending back the remittances. So if we start having those people be deported en masse, the trickle-down effect or the impact is going to be felt immediately, because there are so many people in Jamaica who depend solely on somebody sending them remittance every month. So the government needs to look into this fact rather than later, because that's going to be the first impact. The wall that is being discussed, and at various stages, who is going to pay for it. An interesting editorial by Dr. Dahlia in the National Weekly newspaper in Florida, that if Trump does build a border wall with Mexico, it would divert the flow of drugs from Mexico and South and Central America into the Caribbean. And that would also have a crippling impact on Jamaica. So ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for the ever-changing policy. And I am open to coming back, Courtney, to talk whenever Mr. Trump actually does develop a policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dahlia. Two of the most important points made by Dahlia is A, about Alexander Hamilton. Anybody in the field of economics that doesn't know Alexander Hamilton has a problem. Alexander Hamilton, that man from St. Kitts and Nevis, that small island, is widely reputed to be America's first and greatest Treasury Secretary. He contended that there have been three great inventions since the beginning of time: fire, the wheel, and central banking. The primary role of a central bank is to control the flow of high-powered reserves in an economy that is consistent with the highest employment possible and price stability. And it brings us to the point: Mr. Trump is in fundamental disagreement with Janet Yellen, who is the chair of the Federal Reserve Board, the American Central Bank, because Janet Yellen feels that there is no need for any further fiscal stimulus because the American economy is operating at full capacity. Technically speaking, the aggregate supply curve is now vertical, and any fiscal stimulus would lead to higher interest rates and more inflation. So there's a fundamental disagreement, and she's contended that she has a job until January 1, 2018, and she's going nowhere, and the job of the Fed, the American economy, successes. So there's a fundamental clash here between the and now in terms of the job mention, he wants to take. Remember, and I were watching Treasury Secretary Paula when the greatest speaks. While Paul was speaking, the Dow was S&P 500. S&P fell to 900. So its national average fell to 1,000. The Nasdaq fell to 1,500. American jobs at a rate of 20,000. The fiscal deficit peaked at 10% of GDP in 2009. Unemployment also peaked at 9%. Fiscal deficit 3% of GDP, employment 4.2%. are being created at a rate of 200 per month. There is no need for any further step. Okay. Now, one of the things that we have been pushing in Jamaica is the business process outsourcing. That sector employs 19,000 persons, generating 300 million in foreign exchange annually. Now, Paula Jarrett is a major player in that sector. She's a director of the Barrett group of companies, which provides infrastructure for companies. She's also a director of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, a director of Champion, and she's also a member of the Economic Growth Council. So, without further ado, we'd like her to come and tell us about the potential impact on the BPO sector, which is one of the sectors that we are banking on to accelerate economic growth.
Thank you very much, Ralston. I love the way that some of those things are in the past, some are current, but I like there tells us, Dennis says to me, take it, just accept it. You know, and I was on the way here and the traffic was terrible from the airport. And I was listening to a program, and for the first time I heard about something called alternative truth. And I thought, my gosh, where are we gone? So I'm here to talk about a much more narrow subject, and that's business process outsourcing. As some of you might know, I'm of that industry. We have seen it grow in Jamaica, not at the pace that we could be growing. I still believe that we have a lot further to grow. Today, I spoke to 3 vice presidents of the major corporations, not just in Jamaica, who invest here and who have footprint, but also some of the largest globally. And they assure me that they're not pulling back on plans in Jamaica. And I had dinner with the CEO of Sutherland Global, who's in Jamaica for a few days, and he's here to continue the expansion plans. So I believe that, and I was very by the 2 speakers previously, because the fact is that I don't know if Trump has a policy, and nobody really does. But there is one fact, and that is that he is the 45th president of the United States. And there's nothing we can do to change that. So we're going to have to start to look at how we can leverage what we have going for us in Jamaica. Approach. As Dennis mentioned earlier about the market, we need to look at how Jamaica can reposition or reposition itself to be able to benefit from anything that Trump might come up with. Because at this point, nobody knows. And frankly, I think with the way that he behaves, with its alternative truth, nobody will ever know. And so the fact is that we just don't know. And you know, it's interesting because being on the Economic Growth Council, and I've probably taken my entire 6 minutes, haven't I, Paula? But being on the Economic Growth Council has been such an incredible learning curve for me, because it's one thing to deal with your own business. It's another level to deal with a constituency, which I did for a few years as a caretaker, but basically taking on the role of an MP. But it's another entire level to deal with a nation. And what we've found with the Economic Growth Council, and something that Michael Ichin and myself always exchange notes about, is that we're now dealing with something so much larger and with so much more weight than either of us have had to deal with. Similar principles, but the fact is that now you're dealing with a broad spectrum. And I believe that Mr. Trump is going to find himself in a very similar situation. Because it's one thing to get up and talk about Trump Tower. It's another thing to start to talk about Iran, Iraq, talking about the British relations with Europe, being pulled into events and disagreements that have nothing to do with within your borders. But the fact is that people are looking to you. And that is not going to change overnight. The other positive, I think, for the BPO industry, which is a very big one, is that Jamaica is English speaking. No, of course, we rely almost 100% on North America as the largest market now. But the fact is that many of these multinationals that we have based here are not just based or headquartered in America. And the fact is that that won't change. In fact, as Danny said earlier, if there is a mass exit, which would take a very long time, those companies are not going to change what they do. They're still going to be selling goods and services. And the fact is that Jamaica, in the BPO industry, it is a service-based industry. We are not involved in manufacturing or trade. It is strictly service-based. So whatever you create, we service you. And we service you all over the world. And that is where our key strength is, in my opinion. As Jamaicans, we all know, apart from the global and the time zone, etc., that are in our favor, the fact is that Jamaicans are one of the top favored employees in the world. Within one of our clans who represent AT&T, within the first 6 months of them opening, they had won internationally for AT&T the prizes on certain, best customer service, all sorts of things. Jamaicans we're just good at speaking to people. We're likable. We have a big likability, and it comes across on the telephones. So we're just looking at the base of the industry. We, I believe, have a far way to go. We can grow. The next thing that we look at as we move up the pyramid is in the sort of added value services and the more technical things, which is where I personally would like to see Jamaica go, because a job it pays a lot better. And when we look at our people, we're the most creative people I believe there are on this planet. And we will, we're very tech. So the fact is, as where we need to focus on right now, as I said, is leveraging our strengths. We need to focus on, and we are, and it is improving each day, on educating our people and training them with skills that will let them be less dependent on lower paying jobs and more dependent on and more able to provide higher level services that are required all over the world. Creating apps. Apps are used just by Americans. The apps are not even created in America anymore. Many of them are created in China and then used by people all over the world, including us. I mean, my churn introduced me to an app a few days ago, which I'm having a lot of fun with, called Bitmoji. It takes B-emoji, be an emoji. It takes you and your personality and your look and makes you the emoji on your app. So, it's endless. We have won Microsoft Awards right here in Jamaica. Right here, our young people are creating apps and creating solutions and all sorts of things that are helping the world. And it's happening right under our nose. Jamaicans are very, as I said, creative. Again, to give you an example, and because I speak to these people at least weekly, I hear all the good stories. And in fact, we're going to do a documentary on it. So many. In Vistaprint, which is one of our larger tenants, they're captive, which means that they don't even care what's happening in America, because they create employment within their own business. And we need more of those. So they provide the service for what they sell. And they tried our people on actually not just answering the phone and all in and outbound calls and marketing and sales, but on creating the logos and the items at Vistaprint, the business card, the t-shirts, etc. And they thought, we offer it to everybody else in the world. Why not Jamaica? And it just blew their socks off, because Jamaica, every year for 3 years now, globally, our people have been creating the most sought after, most asked for logos online in their products. These are stories that we need to hear about. And so I have that I haven't looked at this at all, so I probably have left out most of what I should have said. But the fact is that I believe that there's a lot of space for growth in this industry. It's not just about business process outsourcing. It's not just about answering a phone. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in this space. It's about technology. It's about service. It's about marketing. It's about sales. It's debt collection. It is international. Yes, a lot of these companies are based in America, but they might have their headquarters there now. In 5 years, 6 years' time, depending on what Trump ends up doing when he is in power, they could be somewhere else, but it's not going to affect us, because we are a virtual industry. And I think that, I would just end on saying that, we need to just focus on leveraging and collaboration. We have to be pragmatic as a nation. We have to think Switzerland. Jamaica has to think like Switzerland. We need to be pragmatic right now. We're interested in growth. We're interested in 5 and 4. We're interested in our borders. And if he wants to make America great again, well, we want to make Jamaica greater. Thank you very much.
Thank you very very much, Paula. We certainly like the upbeat tone of your presentation because the business process outsourcing sector is a key sector. In Jamaica, what is happening internationally means that we'll have to become more agile, we'll have to become more focused in what we're doing because we need to earn more foreign exchange. In our new agreement with the Washington-based International Monetary Fund, we are not being marked again on net international reserve. We are being marked on non-borrowed reserve. The agreement is that we reserves up to about $4 billion by 2021, and the amount borrowed must be only 20 cents out of each dollar. We must earn, our Bank of Jamaica must buy the remaining 80%. So it means that we'll have to earn more foreign exchange. Now, going into what Paula said about foreign, Mr. Trump is summoning the Israeli Prime Minister to the White House sometime next week, and they are going to discuss the probability of locating the American embassy in East Jerusalem rather than in Tel Aviv. Now, anybody who knows anything about foreign policy and the Palestinian relationship will tell you that it's likely wrong. It's going to create a whole lot of problems with it. It's also trying to renegotiate the peace with Iran. It's going to create significant problems. So when we look at the numbers, one of the major variables in the current economy is the significant reduction in global energy prices. We have reduced the current account deficit from 30% of GDP to 2% of GDP last year, primarily because of the reduction in global prices. What we have been seeing since last year is an uptick in prices. So we saw the British benchmark North Sea blend climbing by 50% last year. American benchmark West Texas Intermediate pushing climbing by 45%. That's on the back of the agreement between non-OPEC members, including Mr. Putin and OPEC members. What we're saying is that crude oil prices are also impacted negatively by what we call geopolitical tensions, particularly in the Middle East. OPEC produces 40% of the world's output. So that's a problem that we need to look at. And then it's told you, oil imports represent 35% of the world. Any disruption could have a significant impact on the Jamaican economy. When we looked at how the markets reacted, what we saw was that S&P 500 fell by 0.3%. That's the index that measures the 500 largest corporations. We also saw the Dow falling to 19,800. That's the index that measures the market value of the 30 largest corporations. We saw the Bloomberg dollar dropping by 0.7%, and we also saw the euro climbing against the US dollar. We also saw the yield of the 10-year Treasury note trading at 2.39%. Now, this is a very important rate because it's the benchmark rate against all long-term rates. However, Jamaica borrows 10 to 15 years. What we always see is there's a spread between the 10-year and what the actual rate is. 6 or 800 basis points. Already in this environment, that interest is contributing to have an impact on the Jamaican economy. So it is therefore against this background that we now call Devon Barrett. Devon is the group chief chief of wealth management. He's a strategic and visionary leader who has been with the Victoria Mutual Fund since 2008. On September 1, 2016, Mr. Barrett assumed the role of Group Chief Investment Officer with responsibility for diversifying the group's investment portfolio. He retains his post at the helm of Victoria Mutual Wealth Management, where his primary areas of focus include conceptualizing, implementing strategic directions of the company, managing the company's balance sheet, ensuring compliance with all regulatory requirements, and managing growth in profit and shareholder value. A very big and complex job in this environment. Therefore, without further ado,
thank you, Ralston, for that intro. I think I could just stop there. But I was asked earlier, why we decided to do this forum now, and the answer was simple. And fact is, when it was done, any other, truth is, we would have had to come up with some strategies to move forward. So yes, it's Donald Trump. It made us have to go back to the drawing board and come up with some new ideas. But the truth is, we'll all benefit from what we have to discuss here. So when we looked on what was said by now President Chung, we things on Friday from his inauguration speech. The first one was America. Then we heard Buy America. Then we heard Americans protect American border against me. Then we heard eliminate terrorism. So there are a number of things that he has talked about. Of course, he's lacked specifics on a lot of these issues. I have to find all the around what he said. He spoke on the campaign about prioritizing employment, capital expenditure, $1 trillion spend on the infrastructure of America, and the whole issue of trade. You heard people talk about the trade a while ago. Took some action on that today. And the regulatory repeals, especially when it comes to the financial sector, which we are very intimate with, and we know the impact that can come from it. So what has happened as a result of the first thing is that when he was voted back on November 8th, everything it looked like a risk off. So that's a technical term, so let me take it over. It means that the market views all of this as bad, and as such, certain actions were taken. For instance, the market pushed interest rates down because in the US or in the third world, when there's risk off, interest rates goes down. The market off in the US. When stocks and water would peak, which is why interest rates, right? So it's risk off. The currency around strength. No, it weakened at subsequently strength. So here's what it looked like subsequent the vote. So I get a vote was risk off. Day it was risk. What the risk on has resulted in since the election night, the stocks in the US have moved up on since the election. So the whole of last year, 10%. Since election night, 6%. Since election night, we've seen about 50 basis points movement upwards in interest rates. To say there's optimism that the economy is going to get better, so interest rates are going up. Since election night, the US dollar has strengthened against most of its trading partners. So everything looks like this. Right, Mr. Grant? Yeah. Well, here we are today. We here at Dr. Policy talked about that. So we keep trying to. But today we have not heard about. Maybe we're expecting too much. Yes, we're going to have our expert, what tweet up for the news, or the breaking news, right? Well, all we heard about today, border tax. When you start hearing things like border tax, you have to start thinking about the impact on trade. If you have a trade war to have going on, then you know the impact on the world. That's where risk off comes in, right? Because the risk off will become risk on, right? So the truth of the matter is, some of the things that are said by the president of the US are things we're going to have to interpret. Some of them, it's going to be hard for you to really implement, but the truth is we're going to have to interpret a lot of what is being said. So let us kind of get down into it a little bit and see how these will impact the US market and the power market as a result of it. So the first one has to do with interest rates. So we talked about the 50 basis points movement upward on the 10-year rate at Ralston earlier. That is key for our market because if interest rates move up anything that in the US market, then they move up here. So simply put, there's about an 800 basis points spread between our 10-year note and the US 10-year note. So if it goes up by 50 basis points, and the US expect at least 50 basis points. I know Jamaica has exaggerated. It's like way more than 50 basis points, right? So we have to worry when something like that happens, and we have to kind of think about what will be next. So we've kind of sat back and looked at what is possibly going to happen next when it comes to interest rates. And we say, you know what is likely to happen in the short term, and we're going to talk about this year. We're going to focus a little bit on what we have this year and see if we can kind of direct our attention in the right place. The truth is, the short-term interest rate, that is to say the 1 month, 2 month, or 3 months rate, they move up a little bit quicker because the anticipation is high. So if your interest rates are going up, everything will move quicker in the short term. But with the longer term, we expect that there's going to be a market realignment. So here's how the market realignment works. The market sees interest rates going up, and the market says, but hold on, is it sustainable? Sustainability is important because if you go back to 2008 and look at what happened in the market back in 2008, it is the same high interest rate regime that caused us to be where we are today. What happened in 2008, the world markets crashed because a lot of stimulus was required by the world, not the US, by the world. And here we are today with an economy, with a world economy that is really packed, jam-packed with stimulus, financial stimulus, which if removed could result in some of the same problems we had back then. So yes, the US is at full employment, the creation of jobs, going up at about 4.2% in terms of unemployment right now. But the reality of it is, it's under what we call new normal. New normal simply says that yes, the economy will do well, but it's going to be with a lot of stimulus that is in place now. Now, President Trump comes with a new kind of stimulus where he's going to offer a tax break. Then he's going to expect that the tax break is going to be used to fund the capital expenditure in the economy. I don't know where he gets economics from, but I don't think that will work. And we'll ask Ralston to tell us if that can work. Ralston, I think, doesn't think it can work, and we also don't think it can work. So the reality of the situation is, just to cut a long story short, is that we don't think the market will allow interest rates to fly up on the longer end like it's being reflected right now. So we expect some kind of pullback, and we've seen the pullback. I mean, back on January 8th or somewhere in that region, the interest rates on the 10-year note, the yield on the 10-year note moved to like 2.60%. Now it's down to 2.4%. So I think we've hit a sort of psychological level that walk past. I think we're back at a place of more comfort. And when we look at what is being predicted by most analysts, I think everybody expects that. Yes, you have some volatility, but we end up probably in a similar place to where we are now. Now that is partially good news for us because any interest rate movement upwards for us could do damage to our economy. As I told you earlier about the additional costs that we've had to find additional monies that we have had to find just because of one, depreciation in the currency, and two, increase in the cost of funding. So it leads me to the next point about the currency movement. You heard me talk about the strengthening of the US dollar earlier. And if the US dollar is strengthening over the world, guess what? It's strengthening here in the movement. More than needs, more than of our currency. Our currency depreciates some more, and that's bad news for most of our economy. Right? Exactly. Your policy in for BPO too. Right? So the truth of the matter is to rely on what happens in that world. Now, as I said earlier, I absolutely don't think the long yield will run away in the near term. I think that gives us a little bit more, comfort. But what we have to do in the meantime is to ensure that we take care of our fiscal issues. Our fiscal issues are those that have caused our cost of funds to go so high. It means that when we have big spends on some of the things that are not fundamental to the economy, that is likely to get a problem. So we have to put the dollars in the right place so that when it's all said and done, it benefits the economy. Now, one thing that has been done in recent times is that in the fourth quarter last year, between the third and fourth quarter, the government embarked on a plan to buy back some of the shorter debt. sort of maturing it. So the 2017 bonds, the global bonds 29 partially bought that, but substantially bought that. Which means for the next year or two, we won't be required to find so much international reserves to pay those back. So that's a good relief for us. But it means while we get some breathing room here, we cannot afford to squander it. We have to not make it while it's not shining. So that is where the opportunity for us is. Now that we know that currency movement can be adverse. Okay? Stocks in the US are a good indicator of what can happen when you have this a lot of talk. Because the truth is, fundamentally, the companies in the US have done well, but not as well as they have done, as the market has made them out to be in the last 2 months. So the market has said these stocks are 6% better than where they were 2 months ago. Reality is, I don't think so. And the results now are showing that that is not necessarily so. So what we found up to now is that the market has overvalued stocks in the US. And that is a recipe for disaster because when the market starts to go south, it goes south in a hurry. Right? And so we are a bit concerned about that part of it because if interest rates move up, or if it doesn't move up too fast, especially if it moves up more on the short end, like we talked about earlier, it is likely that we're going to see some pullback in stock prices. You see a pullback in stock prices in the developed world, then you know there are some other impacts that will come. We'll see impacts of interest rates and other things. So I'm just saying that is one area of concern for us. A lot of people don't think there's a relationship between the US stock market and our stock market. The truth is, when you invest in the same, if you lose the money on one market, you're going to sell on others to gain that you sell out of the losses that you carry. So we have to think that it could also impact on the market. Companies don't do so much business abroad, a lot of them depends on what happens overseas. So we have to be concerned about that. The last big one I want to put on is oil prices. Oil prices, Ralston talked about it earlier. We saw 50% movement in oil prices in the year 2016. So yes, a lot of it would have come from the fact that at the end of 2050, we had a major sell-off. So if you were to take back out of that 50%, 10-15%, still a 35% movement in oil in the year 2016. So we're open is trying to do some things to get oil prices up again. But the reality of it again is that the US has a lot of oil that it wants to sell. And I don't think President Trump with his new plans, will allow OPEC to dictate where he wants to go. So they're asking for some good news. That may be one of the places for good news for us. And that's about 35% of our economy. So that may be, in my view, a source of good news. So the expectation is that US will continue to produce more oil, and oil prices we think somewhere in the region of about, it's now 52, 53, I think it will at most go to say $6 a barrel. $6 a barrel, we can live comfortably, but we always have to buy insurance, right? And I know the difficulty sometimes here is that we don't need the insurance, but we only know that you need the insurance when you need it. So the strategy is that I think we should buy the insurance out, even though we have a good view that it's not going to go beyond. So spend a little bit more on insurance would move the cost of a barrel of oil from say 60 to 65. That wouldn't kill us. That's really the way to look at it, right? So it's not waste of money. It's really just to kind of ensure that we do going forward. Point further. Going forward, the building of our reserves are going to depend a lot on not borrowed funds, but earned funds. So a dollar saved is a dollar earned. So if I save on oil prices, then at the end of the day, the reserve will save as a result of it. So having said all that, the news is mixed, is what I would say, right? I don't think it's time to have major worry yet. I think it's more positive, more in our favor now than otherwise, despite the jitters on the ground. But the truth is, I think we benefit more, a little bit more this year, next year, and subsequent years. I have to say, is going to be a worry. So I close with what I was saying that I've heard recently. don't know who said it, but I'm going to take a shot at it, that while America is building walls, China seems to be building bridges. So it looks like we may become more Chinese than we believe at the end of the day. So maybe it's not such a bad to grab Trump as president. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Devon. That was actually said by the man himself, Xi Jinping. The contents that the Chinese are going to be purchasing some 8 trillion in goods over the next 5 years, investing 750 billion overseas, and we're mobilizing some 600 billion in foreign direct investment. There are also contents that they what we call a road and belt program, in which the Chinese are going to spend some $50 billion to build the roads. They call it traditional trade routes, by saying that China is open for business while some people are closing down. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard all of those comprehensive presentations covering tourism, remittances, investment, environment, equity markets, foreign exchange markets. It's now your time to ask your questions. Keep them as brief as possible and direct them to the particular panelists who want to answer. For sure.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentations. I just wonder if a couple of points were not elaborated upon. One, in all the remarks, it is assumed as if he is the king and the monarch. That means no constitution exists, no Congress exists, and nobody is there in this world to stop him. So I want Dahlia to comment on that. There was a comment that will achieve all that he's saying. So that means he has said he will eliminate ISIS. And let us assume, since you are assuming he will achieve everything, so he will start. What is the impact that is on the world globally? 7 billion people of the world living in some peace. One more point. I was telling my family on Sunday that we have to curtail entertainment budget because you don't have to go to anywhere. You will have enough at home.
Your last comment is well taken, and I think we're going to be we're in for a ride for the next 4 years if the president of the United States makes it that long. There is a system of checks and balances in the United States, of course. You have the executive, which is the president. You have the legislative, which is Congress, the House, and the Senate. And you have the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court. What makes a Trump presidency a little scary is because the Republicans also control the House and the Senate. But I've been saying this since the election, that I have put faith in some true conservative Republicans, that they will not allow Donald Trump to change the fabric of America. Mr. Trump is the first person that I have seen run for president who has never harkened back to the founding fathers of the United States, to the Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence, to what makes America America. And I think he lacks the fundamental knowledge of the Constitution and the founding of America. The other day, he took a lot of flack for making a comment about John Lewis, that he's all talk and no action. And my response is, I really don't think he knows. I don't think he knows the importance of what John Lewis has been through and what he's done, not only as a civil rights leader from the 1960s, but what he's done since. So to your point, I don't think that, and I have a hard time saying this, but Donald Trump as president will be able to get everything that he wants done. He doesn't realize it yet, but he will come up against the systems that are in place. And it's going to present a huge setback for him when he comes up against the Congress and even the judiciary.
Thanks.
That's the point for you know, Trump doesn't have to succeed at what he doesn't have to succeed at what he's doing. So, for example, under the US Constitution, Barrett can command the armed forces in 90 days. Without waiting on people. So you don't need more than 30 to create a major problem in the world. So, you know, he might want to eliminate ISIS, and when we get to that objective, it is great. But you know, the stage is that all vital signs are is when you're dead. Right? So it's not just achieving the objective, but what is he going to do in that process to achieve the objective? And I think that's where it's dangerous in terms of his interference with the Middle East, his positioning with Russia, all those things, and that is what Ralston was saying would create a serious impact on our crisis.
Thank you very much, Barrett. Do we have a question from Cyrus? Go ahead, please.
What I'm saying is that what we can push it small business aside. Just focus on that right now at this present time. The aim is this stuff. It is for small businesses and forces local because it cannot find 50,000 pay mandatory. Small business takes several to 6 years to get maturity.
Question?
I don't think Trump will come to that.
Right. Question is not so relevant to what we're discussing here today.
Thank you, Ralston, and thanks to present very good presentation. I just wondered if anybody had assessed what the other side of the immigration problem, because it is one thing to say that remittances will be affected because of the immigration policy. But if you take a logical conclusion, those who earn in the US and send back will suddenly be out here where they're more likely to be dependents rather than people sending funds. So I think they have a double one, and I don't know if anybody has assessed the economic impact of that. Yeah.
It really depends on who gets deported, and if it is the breadwinner in the family, then it's going to create a problem. There are many single people who are in the US, particularly those who are undocumented, who have left their children behind in Jamaica in hopes of finding a better life in America. And if those people, many of whom are women, fortunately, who have gone to America, they're there 5, 10, 15 years, and they've not been able to get status. If those persons start to get sent home, then we're going to have a problem. And the question is, what is Trump going to do about, how is he going to get to those people? And so again, it comes back to who heads the various. What is the philosophy, say, a General Flynn, when it how they're going to track down people. And when the fare goes up, people retreat. So people who are working stop working because they have to take public transportation to get to work. The fear is that ICE agents are now going to be at bus stations in higher numbers, subway stations asking for documents. And so people who actually have jobs and are sending funds back, when the fare increases, they stop going to work. Because if there are workplace raids, if there are those transportation raids, so it doesn't even need people deported to act right, to be physically sent back to start having an impact. So the fear is there, and it is significant, and we just really have to wait and see what is going to happen and how the implementation is going to take place.
So, let's get Paula.
Okay, if I could just add quickly, is that not necessarily from, that's a very deep and more of an immigration perspective, but the fact is that what we need to do, and I'm just going to say it again, leverage the arts grants. Right now, we should be focusing on skills training and educating our people, putting in programs. So if the people do come back who are unskilled, they can quickly get into the program and get skilled to get a job to start growing Jamaica and making Jamaica great. My focus right now is on making Jamaica great again.
Hi. I keep it short, please. Finally, I thought I'd compliment this Kerr-Jarrett's statement, trying to leverage whatever we can in our Jamaican economy. At the same time, I've always thought that there was a concern that the immigration program that President Trump offers, the border statements that he has made, has to do more with companies that close down in America and try to import their overseas products back to the country. I mean, it stands to reason that whatever we can leverage to gain benefits, as Mr. Kerr-Jarrett said, is something that perhaps we should concentrate on. What do you make of that?
No, I completely agree, and I think that is where the service base is so important. Really, I mean, as I said, I never looked at my notes, and probably stupidly, because I probably missed it about 50% of what I should have told you. But the fact is that when you look at what Trump said here, you know, he says as a new president that he, after he got over the big election win and probably the big shock of it in his own self, is that he's going to kickstart growth, improve cyber and border security, pull out of the Trans-Pacific, which he's begun, renegotiate trade deals, improve government ethics, restore our laws, and bring back jobs. The kind of jobs he's looking at are, as you said, so far, we don't have a crystal ball, but to this point, we can only assume they are the car manufacturers, the people who are manufacturing and producing abroad and bringing back tax-free into the US and selling them and taking those jobs away. The BPO does not fall in that category, and that's why, as I said, I'm bullish on BPO.
I too, because he insists that he's going to reduce business taxes. Reducing business taxes increases employment. So they'll understand the reason that if, as President Kennedy did back in 1960, as President Reagan did in 1982, that you reduce taxes, increase business opportunities. They'll understand the reason that there are lots of benefits that we can gain if we seek to leverage whatever we have learned over all these years too.
All of that is not going to happen. That Trump is more like Tinkerbell.
Good night, everybody. This may have been so excuse me if it was already discussed. But remittances make up a large part of Jamaica's GDP. Tourism?
15% of GDP.
15% of Jamaica's GDP. Unfortunately, many Jamaicans are in the States working illegally. Fortunately, they're sending money back home. There's one particular policy, the CFR 130-121, which Trump is proposing to amend, and it says to redefine applicable financial institutions to include transfer companies like Western Union and redefine account to include wire transfers. Also including rule a requirement that no alien may wire money outside of the United States unless the alien provides a document establishing his lawful presence in the United States. Have we discussed at length the potential impact that this may have on the economy?
Well, the fact that the system is not transfers, that has to 11 when the hijackers used notification and were able to legally. So it has increasingly more difficult for undocumented to have ID. And right now, you need an ID to wire money or to from Western Union. So you don't have a current license or state ID, it's difficult for you to wire transfer. But that will be an interesting development, which I think not only to watch as a country, but the government of Jamaica will take a through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and overseas missions. There are some countries offer their residents ID in addition to passports that are accepted at banks and other institutions that allow people are undocumented to navigate the system. So it's something that I would suggest that Ministry of Foreign Affairs definitely follows very closely, because that will have an impact. Now, we tend to talk a lot about the undocumented in the US, and you may not have heard my mathematical calculation that it's probably about 67 to 70,000 undocumented Jamaicans who are there. But never forget that within the US, we have probably close to, we estimate, 1 million Jamaicans and second generation Jamaicans. So while that is going to be significant, we need to look to the Jamaicans who are there. And it's one of the issues that we have as a diaspora, in that we are so fractured. We don't and vote on issues that come at home. Hopefully, after the march on Saturday in Washington, as well as non will begin to organize around how they're going to live through 4 years of a Trump president.
Sorry, just quick. So long and short of it, we have no idea what's going to officials. So other question. I mean, we've been talking a lot about the doom and gloom or the negatives of a Trump presidency. What are the potential positives of a Trump presidency?
Well, correction, sir. We weren't here discussing doom and gloom. We were discussing the challenges and the opportunities and the likelihood.
Well, I mean, perceived by me.
Yes, well, that's your characterization.
If I could just quickly say that I would like to differ. The fact is that what we're really focusing on is the plan, what we do have. And, you know, I was just looking back at my notes, and, you know, now the positive about the BPO, and I talk about the BPO a lot because I realize that it's a hidden treasure in Jamaica. And until I got into it, I didn't understand how big and what potential it has. But the funds that are earned here by the companies that establish themselves here and have a footprint are not we are interested in jobs. They're interested in repatriating most of their funds. That might not be the ideal situation, but that is what tourists do in many respects. And the fact is that we just have to figure out how to go up more and more up the value chain so that our jobs can have greater value and greater weight. That's growth. That's not doom and gloom. That's positivity. That's looking to the future.
Thank you very much, Paula. Do we have another question from Silas?
Yes. Teddy. Teddy.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead, Teddy.
Immigration expert, something like that. As a layman, cutting the tax rate from 35 to 6%. That to me like employment that companies will go to Mexico or other countries come back. So the doom and gloom perpetuating here in Jamaica about Trump presidency. But the economics that the taxes from 35% to 16%, great thing regards to bringing back business. The immigration area, Barack Obama, according to statistics, at least over 3 persons get deported. In it, affect our immigration rates. Yeah. So, we know Chung said he's going to deport undocumented citizens. and if they not record the income or something, where you be given priority, give a drive for visa. So I don't see a Trump's presidency as so negative as long as
allow them to answer. Allow them to answer today. Thank you. Listen.
Let me see what I'm saying first.
Well, I don't know how he's going to cut the rate. It's going to be a while. It's already run a series.
What's it deficit?
So
$606 billion.
And in addition to that, what he's trying to do, if he goes through it, is at a 35% border tax. So price is going to go up. So, as I say, it's pure land, you know.
Well, in terms of, I did say earlier, maybe the call I didn't hear, that President Barack Obama did deport than his was. But what you have to understand, there's estimated 11 to 13 million documented here. Trump has threatened force to remove. Now, can you just 11 million people the have just on Jamaica, so we there's 70,000, but on the U.S. in terms of people who are in the workforce being removed, and then to the economic impact, removing 11 million people from the workforce, can you replace them with Americans? That's a big issue, and maybe living in Jamaica. People don't doom and gloom, and certainly some people in America who are very happy with the election of President Trump. But you just have to take a look at actions that occurred on Saturday with how many people marched not in Washington, all over the place, places that did not get coverage all across the United States. That people are, and the world, people are concerned about a Trump presidency, primarily because it is breeding instability. We've all talked here and laughed it off that we don't know what's coming, but not knowing what's coming is a serious, serious threat to not just the economy, but the entire stability of the United States. And that's why people are worried and nervous and feel doom and gloom.
That's a fundamental point.
Other thing you had mentioned was if you move the tax rate on from 35, someone like what we have done such a significant jump, it's going to cause inflation. Yeah. That's what I mean. No productivity increase, and you increase stimulus, as you said.
And one of the fundamental points made by Dahlia is about uncertainty. The difference between risk and uncertainty is that you can measure risk, but you cannot measure uncertainty. Markets like predictability. Listen.
I want to go back to oil prices. And I just look back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I noticed, I recall, and when I looked at it, that in 74, the oil prices jumped. I would put in the bauxite level, and I don't even think our moderator would have predicted the collapse of the bauxite industry in Jamaica, which is almost non-existent today. Yeah. And I think in the pendulum of ups and downs, of it, I think what we need to do, which I think is what we were alluding to, is to make hay when the sun rises. So when it is done, we have to find new avenues, because what in BPOs, in agriculture, in whatever it is, to make sure that we get battle ready, because what you do know is that people who produce and are not going to sit down and take the leads indefinitely. So we get a little breather right now. We have to get our house together and put in the investments in whatever area that when the oil prices go up, we'll be in a better position than we were before. And I mean, we're doing it now with getting more efficient electrical production, getting into BPOs, etc. I see the same thing with remittances, tourism. The rooms that's being built. We're getting our infrastructure together with remittances. We're doing that when last year. I give thanks to $2.5 billion, but we have to know that if it's one, we can survive. So I think we just have to make it when the sun shines, and I think with the oil prices, with the BPO, get our house in order.
Fundamental points. Okay.
congratulate and add to that. And I just keep endorsing it. The fact is that, for too long we our borders. We as Jamaicans need to start believing in who we are and what we can do. We need to start focusing on bringing our crime down. We need to start focusing on getting our production up. We need to stop talking about it and trying to strategize and just start executing. We as every Jamaican here and listening outside, look, we need to look inside. We need to figure out how can we be creative, how can we be innovative, and we need to start producing our way out of our problems and producing our way into a great nation, because that is what we are.
Right, this is a very good discussion, and I really want to congratulate you for opening this up to the movement. This is a controversial question statement. It appears as if that remittances is going to be a problem. Now, we know where remittances come from, a section of the society that generate remittances. They've never really looked at remittances going the other way. And I think that is probably even more significant. Now, since we have very little control about the remittances coming here, with these policies that I can maybe we can start looking at creative ways in which we can decrease some of the remittances going the other way.
Yeah. Well, when we look at outbound remittances, they are very marginal in relation to what is coming in. If we look at street remittances, if we are talking about the repatriation of profits or FDI, that is something that we can reason about, because investor wants to be assured that if he invests in Jamaica, he can take his money back. Yeah, and that's the international norm. So you can't ask the investor to invest in Jamaica and then tell him that he can't take his money.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. But it needs to be examined.
Okay. One final question. Yes, sir.
One of the things I think I'd love to hear from the panelists is if all these things are taking place in the international marketplace in terms of interest rate movement, like tax shifts, why can't Jamaica look at the physical attractiveness of Jamaica and then try to enter the international marketplace, and either through mergers and acquisition or through leveraging, as Paula is suggesting, to be able to get foreign investment, physical investment in Jamaica so it becomes attractive. Look at the world. The Middle East is a problem. And if you look at many segments of the world, what you have almost outside of, say, Singapore and the Far East, what you have there is Latin America, North America in terms of Canada. Why worry so much about Trump rather than making your country so attractive? And so what I'd like to ask the panel, can't they advocate that instead of talking about $2 billion being put in the supplemental budget to deal with crime, etc., we should be now putting $30 billion. This is what I'd like Dennis to pick up on. That we're going to look at the funding, 14 billion or 16 billion in terms of the tax refund. We should put in that to deal with crime. If we deal with crime, then there's an attractiveness that Jamaica can foster and present. And so that if the country itself can become attractive, then you can get investment and you can get more hotels built, you can get an excitement. So rather than worry about people coming back here, let us look at the possibility of expanding Jamaica certain extent that it becomes an attractive zone in the Caribbean to get to induce individuals to come here and invest. That's what
I'll tell you first. That's a very fundamental, because the high levels of criminality and public disorder, the studies tell it. Studies by Professor Clayton at the University, studies by a multilateral partner indicate that that is somewhere in the region of 6% GDP after 100 billion. This high level of criminality and public disorder in the country is something that we face head on if we need to increase our attractiveness and accelerate economic growth. And that is why we are happy. One of the recommendations of the Economic Growth Council is security of the person and the restoration of public order, because that is impacting on everything that we do. And we need all Jamaicans to participate in this problem. The churches, the schools, the community, the government of Jamaica, all to participate in this problem, because it is the greatest single constraint to accelerate the economic growth in the Jamaican economy at this particular point in time. Now, here's a resource constraint, and that is why this year is going to be an extremely challenging year. Because our multilateral partners, namely the Hyman, they are recommending that we reduce the $176 billion that we pay public sector workers annually and use some of that money, reallocate that money to fight against crime and social security. Now, this is going to be a very challenging task, but it's something that we have to do. We cannot escape that any longer, because the high levels of criminality are destroying the country and holding back economic growth. Dennis, I don't know if you have
Dennis is giving me permission just to quickly add, Ralston, because so much of what you're saying with the EGC is so accurate. And the fact is that, first of all, the IDP have estimated that, conservatively speaking, we would get an immediate 4% growth if we could get crime down by 50%. I mean, just starting with that. The fact is that, you know, you mentioned earlier, well, just a while ago, about getting our country safe. The fact is that we need to get Jamaica safe for every Jamaican. Crime affects every single person, no matter what creed, class, or color. Your neighborhood is not safe. And so every Jamaican needs to make sure that they're willing to secure their neighborhood. We need to become conscious of it. And just quickly to touch on what the gentleman said about the resources, we are brimming over with potential in this country. I was flying in with the same COO, and he's from India. And every time I meet with him, it is like a pleasure, because his mind, when he flies over Jamaica, he has about 10 different ideas. What we need to do is take a map of this country and dissect it almost into about 50 million things that we could be doing. He looked down at the brackish water at Tinson Pen when he landed, and he says, you know, Paula, we have a program in India where I think it was oysters. We use brackish water to do oyster farming, and we export it. For goodness sake, potential is just brimming in our nation. Let us use it.
I don't think I need to add much more on this side. So, all I say is that, I mean, Ralston is right. This seminar is not about crime, because that is the biggest problem, crime and bureaucracy. And, I don't know. We do more harm to ourselves than even Trump can do ourselves. So we have to try to fix it. So as, you know, everybody knows I'm the reality. But one of the points I always make, the chief reality, yes, right? One of the points I always make is that, you know, we talk about the streets being clean and everything, but at the same time, we have a third of our population squatting on things. You know, I make up our minds. First country are Jamaica, no problem. Precisely.
Okay, so it was the beginning, so it was the end. Mr. Cameron's again, as executive privilege to ask the final question.
I just want to add quickly about the whole, I just remembered, you mentioned about the cutting of the public sector, and I overheard somebody in the audience was going to cause unemployment. In an industry, again, we can use to start into new jobs. We just need to retool, retrain, rethink, be creative. It's going to take a lot of planning, but we're going to have to work together because we're going to have to get it done this time.
Ralston, I've just thought it's excellent discussion. Just thought I'd make 2 quick points for those of us who are here in terms of what do we do next. And especially the young people, 2 points. 1, save more. Jamaica has a really low saving rate. I think 11% of GDP. Trinidad has probably 25, 26. We need to be much more disciplined in our saving. And that includes pensions. So for example, if you have a pension fund that arrangement that allows you to top up the employee's contribution, please do that. But that's tax-free saving for you. It's good long-term investment. Please think of doing that. Practical thing that I would encourage us to take away. Second thing is investing. Across eras, across countries, 2 long-term investments make sense: real estate and good stocks. So we're going to encourage lots of investors to come. Don't allow them to come and buy Jamaica. You don't have real estate in Jamaica, right? And the second thing is buy stocks, get advice on companies with good long-term prospects and own some of them. Those are the simple pieces of advice.
Thank you very much, sir. I really very encourage you.
And Ralston, the CEO never said it, what we have to say. Right from here,
Okay, that's not very constructive engagement. You could go on and on for all night, but unfortunately, all good things come to an end. We now call upon Mr. Resberg to do the vote of time. Welcome, Red.
For a rich conversation, would you agree?
Yeah.
I hope somebody from the initiative is taking notes to cabinet. I do believe that some of this conversation needs to be a cabinet and the risk management framework to be engaged or deployed through the various ministers. I think we have quite a talk about immigration, globalization, geopolitics, interest rates, GDP growth, crime, employment, balance of payments, talk about skills training, came back around to production, productivity, crime, investment, and strategizing for the future. So in as much as there is Chung, we will have a role to play turning Jamaica. So if it's Chung or Hillary Clinton, whoever it is, I think so we're very confident that is a very successful event. And I must thank Dahlia, Paula, Dennis, Devon. We got a very informative discussion with all persons listening, those persons in the audience, and those persons who are listening. On that note, we'd like to thank all our clients, special guests, and the media for joining this afternoon. Your attendance and participation aided and enriched the conversation. Special thank you to I can't find a word for Ralston, but he reminded me of the former Prime Minister when he came to give speeches of gave the numbers 2% or 4%, 5%. But certainly it gives context in terms of the conversation. So Ralston, thank you very much. My fellow colleagues at BMG, VMware, thank you for your support. Without your participation, we would have had a successful event. Finally, thank you for the usual service. Before we end, we must give a small token of appreciation to the presenters. So I'm going to invite Nicole Thompson. On the board, we're going to give given to Dahlia and Paula. Dahlia and Paula. Paula, next. So that was Nicole Thompson, Manager of Research and Stockbroking. So the President spoke out before about good companies. So it was important to provide some support in that regime. Dennis Mandela, Manager of Bond Trading, can tell us about the excellent bonds into purchase. She's going to present to Dennis and Ralston. Dennis first. Ralston. Thank you, team. I'm the only one stopping you from between here and your. So thank you very much. Good speed as you travel toward your various. Have a great day.
Before you go, please, cocktails. We want to continue this rich discourse outside. Thank you.